No keyboards anymore.
Good evening and welcome to the March 21st, 2024 meeting of the Planning Commission of the City of Calabasas. We appear to have all commissioners present. Can you hear me?
So.
There we go. We appear to have all commissioners present, and I want to welcome our newest commissioner, Matthew Huzene?
Huzena.
Huzene. I knew I was going to get that wrong.
Commissioner
Huzena.
Matt. Commissioner Matt works
Commissioner Matt.
and is preferred.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you here and appreciate you stepping up.
I'm happy to be aboard. I'm honored to be serving along you.
Good. And we also have, my glasses, we have our Mayor's Youth Council members, Noah and Madeline. And hopefully, you know, if you have any questions or input with today's presentation, feel free, please. Okay? All right. Meeting is called to order, and Commissioner Matt, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you.
All right, right hand over heart. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Announcements and introductions. We're going to start with,
Nothing here tonight, Mr.
okay.
Chairman.
Yes, first of all, a happy Nowruz, happy Persian New Year to everyone who celebrates. And I also saw an article in the LA Times about a proposed tower in Hollywood that's called the Star. And I like it because, well, not only is it LEED rated and well rated and all that, and uses low carbon concrete, which I know Dennis likes, but it's got a spiraling vertical forest, which I've always advocated, so I just thought I'd
Pass it
Sure.
around. Be great.
yeah, I thought that would be great. And then for John, the Theodore Payne Foundation garden tour tickets are still available.
Yes, they are.
And I know he and his wife attend every year, so that's on April 13th and 14th. That's it.
Okay.
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Leah?
Nothing for me.
Commissioner
Other than
Matt?
welcome, what do you got to say?
On the spot. Again, thank you for having me. I served 2 years on the Traffic and Transportation Commission. I spent 2 years on the Historic Preservation Commission. I grew up in Calabasas. I got to go study up in Northern California. I studied in Paris, as did one of my fellow commissioners. This has been by far the best city to live in of the handful I've gotten the privilege to live in. Now I have my own practice. I'm an attorney. I focus on private corporate law. I have handled some real estate cases, and I relish this opportunity to learn more and to contribute at the same time. I think that's really what I'm looking for here, so thank you again for having me.
Terrific. We're happy to have you. Thank you. Okay. Let us move on to oral communications. This is public comment, and this is for those who wish to address the Planning Commission on matters that are applicable to the commission, but not on the agenda for tonight. Do we have anyone in the audience wishing to speak on matters not on the agenda? Nope. Okay, then let's move on to consent items. We've got the approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 1st, 2024. Do we have any changes? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve it.
Thank you.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Aye.
The minutes of the meeting of February 1st. Oh. Let's revise that a little bit. Let's go back.
Should be 2020.
24. Yeah, if we can make that change, let's go back, and I assume the
Yeah,
motion.
consensus
The
can-
motion, your motion is
I
with
thought
that,
that was
that
Yes,
revision?
yes.
Okay.
I'd be happy to second the correction to February 24th.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to item number 2. This is to be a discussion, an update and discussion of the Woolsey Fire Overlay Zone implementation. And that presentation will be made, Michael, Tom, both?
We're both here to answer questions, but I'll deliver a short PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the commission, this is a status report on the Woolsey Fire Overlay Ordinance that was put into effect immediately following that devastating fire. As, of course, everybody remembers all too well, it was in the second week of November that the fire burned more than 96,000 acres, destroyed 1,500 structures approximately, an additional 300 threatened by 50,000 structures and caused evacuation of 250,000 people throughout the area. Relevant to what we're talking about, in Calabasas, 9 single-family homes were destroyed. 6 other residential and non-residential structures suffered fire damage. The overlay zone was adopted only a couple weeks afterwards by the council. It was an urgency ordinance. Urgency ordinances do not go to planning, they're taken on by the council directly. So if any of you have wondered why didn't that ever go through the commission, even though it was an overlay zone, that's why. So that was adopted within only a couple weeks of the fire. It established and provided for streamlined and more expedient review processes, development review fee waivers, the parameters of rebuilding conforming structures, the parameters for rebuilding previously legal non-conforming structures, and suspended certain oak tree permit requirements that would have otherwise been triggered by the site redevelopments. It really would be redevelopments. The council followed that to avoid the original ordinance from expiring when there was still a need. They extended it with another ordinance that maintained the substantive provisions, but extended the deadline to December 31, 2025. And based on the progress that was being made, it whittled down the affected properties from 15 to only 5, because there'd been the rebuilding and or repair of damage. In the case of damaged structures, all of that had been accomplished within that initial 3-year time period. So what did it really allow for more specifically? The overlay zone allowed owners to build their previous square footage and even increasing it up to 20% of what had existed previously with a ministerial approval, meaning not having to go to a public hearing, provided it conformed to the applicable standards and didn't encroach into setbacks any greater than what legally existed before. It provided for a hearing at administrative plan level, which is a director's hearing for rebuilds involving more than 20%, up to 50% greater floor area than had previously existed. And that a site plan review, which would be a public hearing before this body, would be required for an additional 50% or greater square footage. And then a site plan review and a variance, if necessary, for rebuilds that failed to meet all the standards and would be able to justify a variance for some relief to one or more standards. The ordinance makes no distinction regarding renter-occupied, structures versus owner-occupied structures. It simply refers to the rebuilding of the structures, the improvements to the property. The ordinance also didn't make any distinction about property owner status. So regardless of whether the November 2018 owner or any successive owner would submit an application to rebuild, the provisions of the overlay zone applied and no occupancy limitations could be applied. And so we process the permits as they're supplied by whoever owned the property at the time they're supplying or providing the applications. This is the status as of today. Excuse me. And you can see from this, which was included in the written report, there are completed projects for the rebuilds and or repairs everywhere except for basically 2 instances. And I'm saying that from the standpoint of permits issued. So approvals to construct or construction having been accomplished or initiated. The only 2 for which there's been no construction initiated and they don't even have an approval yet are the 2 that are shown in red there. So we have 1 that's still going through a zoning review at the zoning clearance level, that first level. It is very near getting that approved. They are missing only a couple of technical items that are required to be able to process it. And so we anticipate, if I were making this report next month or the month after, you'd see 1 red line in there, and it would be the one for which we've not received any application. We've just had inquiries to this point, people looking into the process and what they'll be able to do. So now with 21 months still remaining, the ordinance has fostered rebuilding and repairs of approximately 90% of damaged and destroyed structures, and it is doing what the council intended in terms of providing a more expeditious process for the rebuilding and preservation of legally established land use and zoning rights that were previously enjoyed at the time the fire went through. And we're available to answer questions.
Thank you. Before I open the public hearing, we have any questions?
Yeah, Tom, do we have a site map that shows Adamore, Parkmore, Magruder Road, and Las Virgenes?
So you're asking for a map that shows where these properties are located?
Well, I mean, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And the location of that is important in the sense that, you know, understand why we did what we are doing. You know, there are riparian areas that the fire actually roared down in order to affect some of those properties. It helps people understand what we've had to deal with in the recovery process and helping get distribution as well of the resources that came in compensation essentially for the damage that was done. It just helps to see that geographically. At least it helps me.
So I
I mean, it doesn't hold up the discussion tonight. I'm just asking if we have such a map.
we have a map internally, so we know where all of these properties are located, and that's mapped. The majority, well, all the homes that were destroyed are in the Malibu Canyon area, so off of Las Virgenes Road, south of Thousand Oaks Boulevard, and a couple homes north of Thousand Oaks Boulevard, but mainly off of Parkmore and then Adamore. There were a couple of homes that sustained damage in the Saratoga Hills area, but the homes that were destroyed were in the Malibu Canyon region.
The simple answer is we don't have a map.
We don't have a map
That's
to
okay.
pull up
I don't have
tonight,
one to show you right now.
but we do have a map internally, so we could pull up where each one of these properties is located.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other there we go.
Yeah, question. It looks like 5460, you received some sort of application because it says zoning clearance pending, but you received something.
Yes,
So-
there is an application that has been submitted for that address.
And when you say zoning clearance, that means it's going to conform to the numbers and the setbacks that.
Yes, in fact, that house is proposed at a lower square footage than the one that was previously existed.
Got it, okay, so that one. The other one, though, the 5450, have you been able to reach the family, the heirs or whoever?
Their inquiries have been made by, I don't know if it was by the property owner or by someone else interested in the property, but staff has received inquiries regarding that property. It has not been the easiest to get hold of all the individuals that had these properties, so.
Well, that one I imagine would be really difficult, because I looked to see who the owner was, and I found him mentioned in an Acorn article when he was 88 in 2012. So, you know, I think you have to, I just wonder if you could reach out to the family or whoever that, and it's a tax defaulted property too. So,
Yeah, the city reached out extensively to all of the owners of the sites right after the fire when
Right.
this process was created. We've answered inquiries that have come in since then, but we haven't done another round of reaching out directly at this time for just the one site left.
okay, but I just think we're kind of a small city. You could try to reach out to figure out who's connected with that property, because it's probably the family, not the.
Well, we did
named
look up
owners.
we did look up ownership history. I mean, it's still in the same ownership
I
as
know,
it
but
existed
they're probably
before.
not around or
It may be
capable.
tied up in a probate situation. It's a little unclear.
Yeah, another, right, so I was just wondering if you could look into that. Okay,
John,
Yeah,
go
just
ahead.
to follow up on Commissioner Harrison's question on 5450, what is the status? Was it substantially destroyed, fully destroyed? Is it red tagged?
It was fully destroyed and completely demolished, or, the site was completely demolished, it's just a vacant lot right
It's a
now.
vacant lot?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a nuisance of any sort to the neighborhood?
I can't make that statement, but it's not a partially built structure or a dilapidated structure. There's no structure on the lot, it's just a dirt vacant lot. Whether that's considered a nuisance to some is,
I would consider it a sandlot baseball field. I don't think an empty lot is a nuisance, but what do I know? Okay, thank you. Answer the question.
All right. Do we have any other questions? All right, I'm going to open the public hearing, and
Actually, in the public hearing, or we are
Public comment.
Well,
Public
following
comment period.
discussion, right?
public comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we do have some speaker cards, so I'm going to open it up for public comment. First card I have is for Alan Nelson. If you could come up to the podium and give us your name and city of residence, please.
Hello,
Hi.
my name's Alan Nelson. I'm a Calabasas resident. I live on Parkmore Road. I live across the street from the two houses that you guys were referring to. And that one you referred to, it is a nuisance because the weeds grow this high and we have to go cut them. The other one, the same house, the owner has died. And his wife.
5450?
I don't know that that matters at all,
Okay.
but, so the reason why I wanted to speak, I live directly across from these two lots. And I've seen what's been happening with the lots down below and one of the lots across the street that has built. And it seems like these houses aren't, to put it simply, these houses aren't fitting into the neighborhood. They're being approved, and they look more like apartment buildings to me than they do. This neighborhood is from 1964. This neighborhood has a certain character, a certain charm. And with these new homes going in, it really is affecting the look and the feel of this neighborhood. It's not just my opinion. I've talked to many, many people in the area, and many, many people, to every single one, has said they're not in favor of what's happening. I know that that the city is under certain restrictions. You have to allow this, you have to allow the ADUs, you have to allow all of that kind of stuff. I get that. It just feels like I wish, if I had a wish list, I wish that the city can look at what buildings are going in and say, does this fit? Or does this look like it's, no offense to North Hollywood, does this look like it's a North Hollywood apartment building that's just landing in this neighborhood? It's really affecting, my opinion and a lot of others, the appeal of this neighborhood. So that's all that I know that's kind of going outside the realm of what this discussion is, but I wish there was a way that the city can take a look at the buildings and say, does this fit in? I know that they can, because we have a gentleman and his wife that are here that did that. Their house is beautiful, it fits right in. They lost their home in the Woolsey fire, and they did a fantastic job, and it fits perfectly in. There's another two that have been put in, another two that have been put in
If you could
that
just
have
wrap it
not
up.
fit in as well, at all. So I just am concerned, and I'll leave. I'm just concerned that we're going down this road of all of these, this beautiful neighborhood that we have that's somewhat, in my opinion, historic, is being changed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next card I have is Anita McQuillan.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Anita McQuillan, a long-time resident of Calabasas. While the Woolsey Fire overlay was intended to help families rebuild and return to their homes, there are examples of it being exploited both by developers and the city planning department. It offers current residents no input as interpreted by the Calabasas Planning Department into projects that exploit the spirit of the law. It is for this reason that I am requesting the overlay plan should be sent back to the council members for revision. The example I give illustrates the negative impact of the current overlay plan. A notice of a public hearing dated November 20th, 23 was delivered to residents within 500 yards of 5421 Parkmore Road, outlining a proposed development project. The project was to build a 2,700 square foot home with an adjoining 1,198 square foot ADU. The original home had been 1,800 square feet, and it was well set back from the surrounding homes. This current project would cover most of the lot size and would have little setback from adjacent homes. Since Parkmore rises in an incline, the proposed property would take up most of the lot size, which meant that it would be overlooking adjacent yards in Ruthwood and Parkmore. Because of the incline of this proposed property, it would have the effect of having a 3-story building overlooking surrounding homes. In addition, the proposed property would have a wraparound balcony, adding to the intrusion of privacy of current residents. A group of neighbours visited the planning department, wrote letters and attended the public hearing. The planning department offered an opportunity to listen to our concerns, but they ignored our input with the refrain that the legal requirements were being met. In their eyes, it was a done deal. Basically, our voices remained unheard. Also concerning is the fact that the houses that have been built since the Woolsey Fire overlay and without public input are being listed as the norm in the city's area home and lot size, rather than the exception, even though there's no opportunity for public input. In other words, outlier buildings in design and mass are being considered the norm by the city planning. Prior to the Woolsey Fire, all houses in the area, except for one out of 500, had a beautiful ranch-style design with a ratio of residence size to lot size that allowed privacy to neighbours. The Woolsey Fire overlay is being used to build much larger residences on existing lots, and in turn intruding on the privacy of existing households. The current overlay needs to be revised by council members. I am requesting that this should happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Bettina Lini?
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing us this evening. My name is Bettina Lini. I'm a resident of Calabasas, long-standing. In regards to the Woolsey Fire overlay, I feel that it probably should have sunset in 2022 at the original expiration. As we saw in the presentation, 5 of the impacted properties had remained to pursue anything. So the sense of urgency to help those who lost their home, such as the family as we have here today, has expired. The 3 actual residents who rebuilt have moved back into their home as quickly as possible, and the overlay ordinance has achieved what its goal was, which was to help make those people whole. The remaining properties, thankfully, with the exception of 1 so far, stayed within the 20% rebuild size. However, staying within that 20% size gave them the authority under a mere zoning clearance to proceed with no impact or no input from us as residents. The 1 property at 5421 that Anita spoke of is at 49.6% and triggered the hearing requirement. Many of us came to that meeting feeling that maybe our voices could be heard. We saw the design. As Alan mentioned, it does not fit. One of the homes that has already been built clearly does not fit. It's a very Mediterranean-style Spanish home that everybody who comes to my house says, "What is with that house?" Very obvious it doesn't fit. It was disheartening to find out that city staff was involved in the existence and creation of that home by steering the fire victims to KB Builders and pre-existing plans, which I believe were from Lancaster or Palmdale, was where they had to go to view sort of these homes. I'll let Scott speak to that more. Anyways, back to the point, we feel this overlay has really taken the voice of the residents away. And even when we were afforded an opportunity to speak our concerns, we weren't heard by staff. We went into a meeting where decisions were already reached, conclusions were already done, final assessments were written with recommendations. We walked out of that meeting feeling completely unheard and found out later that the only changes that were being made was they were asked to make some landscape adjustments and some plants. So Anita's spoken effectively to the inappropriateness of these. There's a feel to our neighborhood that's not being, I guess, appreciated. So I also request that this be reviewed, passed along to City Council for review, and perhaps we need to pursue some type of design standard implementation so that we can maintain that feel of the neighborhood. And Commissioner Matt, having been on the Historic Commission, can maybe help in that path, that maybe there's something historic there that we can work with to not further lose the feel of our nice pocket community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, those are all of the speaker cards that I have.
There's nobody else.
I didn't fill out a card. I was wondering if I may speak.
He didn't turn in his card. We haven't
Can we?
Didn't turn in your card? Come on up.
They're
The
gonna.
speaker may not have
There we
realized
go.
that the card needed to be
I
turned in
wasn't
to speak.
planning on speaking, but my neighbors inspired me. So,
Good. Welcome.
thank
All
you,
right,
thank you.
Scott Zone.
I'm Scott Zone. This is my wife Sharon, and we live on Parkmore Road, and we did lose our house in the fire. We are directly next door to the 5450 lot that you've been referring to. Pardon me, there were 7 houses lost on our street on Parkmore Road. 3 of us have already completed the rebuild. We moved back in 2 years ago. At the time, the city, Calabasas, was just phenomenal in their support. We, once we started building, we rebuilt our house in 9 months. I think we got our permit in 3 months. And we feel very grateful to the city to helping us to get through such a difficult time. I'd like to echo some of the thoughts of my neighbors here. At the time, the allowances the city was making to make it easy for people like us to rebuild were very much appreciated. And however, at this point now, there of the 7 houses, 3 have rebuilt, 1's in progress, 1's approved, and there are 2 remaining vacant lots, and 1 is right next door to me. In both of these cases of the vacant lots, they're not the original owners anymore. So it's not as if the people that lost their homes are being benefited by this. These are people that were not there during the fire, people that will be building. And again, what has come in so far with the 2 houses that I've seen, you know, I don't like to consider myself like a not in my neighborhood kind of person or anything like that, but the 2 houses that have come up are just such sore thumbs. You know, I'm happy for the people. I'm happy these houses were rebuilt. I'm happy to see fewer vacant lots on my street. But what's come up is just such a far cry from the feel of the neighborhood. And a note regarding the lot next door to us, the 5450, is kind of troublesome. It's not a baseball park or a baseball lot or anything resembling that. It's something that I'm out there every couple of weeks clearing the lot because nobody else is. We have looky-loos that go on that lot because once you walk on that lot, you can walk back toward Moreau and you can see the Malibu Creek, and there are a lot of curious people that come there. In the process, they're directly overlooking my backyard, and it's also become a dog park, not in a good way, but in a way of people just coming there to let their dogs poop on this lot, which is right next door to us. And one up from that is the house that they are referring to as this huge, I call it Hearst Castle Mediterranean house. It's 2 up from us, and you can see it from, when I walk my dog, no matter where I go in the neighborhood, I could see this house. And so we still have a vacant lot right next to us, and if something like that were to come up there, it would just be so, you know, overpowering, you know. I welcome the rebuild. You know, again, I'd love to see no more vacant lots on my street. However, in terms of the Woolsey overlay, to me, it seemed like it would make more sense for that to be attached to the owners who lost their houses as opposed to the property itself. Because again, we're into a next generation now, and the people that are going to be building houses on these 2 lots were not people that lost their house in the fire at all. They're coming in now to build something much, much larger. And also to echo my neighbors, I really would hope that as residents of Parkmore Road, that we'll have you know, continued input or have greater input on where the neighborhood goes. My wife and I, we moved here in 1998. We had my son, who's an adult now. We love the neighborhood, and we see we're in the final phase now, the Woolsey fire. You know, we just have a few more vacant lots. You know, we'd love to get them built, get the neighborhood back, but please consider what the neighborhood is and has been. And I think we would very much like to maintain the feel of Parkmore Road and of Calabasas, which we just love dearly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Since this is not technically a public hearing, I guess I don't need to close it,
Right,
correct?
it's just moved from just public comment period to commissioner deliberation
right.
discussion.
Terrific.
I'm sorry. I did have one question. Is it Mr. Zone? Yes. Could I call him back just to?
Certainly. Can
you.
you come back up for a moment, please? Thank you.
I'm first of all delighted that you were able to rebuild, and I'm
Thank you.
sorry for your loss, but it's terrific that you had the experience that it looks like the ordinance was designed to handle. I'm just curious, did you take advantage of the 20% increase in property size
We did.
And did you build a home that was, I assume you didn't build exactly a duplicate of your old home, but what did you do to try to, quote, fit it in the neighborhood?
Here's what we did. At the time, the city was encouraging us to use existing architecture that this house we've been referring to that stands out like a sore thumb. We were given a choice of 6 different plans, and we were told that if we were to utilize one of these, we'd get a great discount. We still have to hire an architect, but would have a great savings. And so we wanted to see what these houses looked like. And the place where these homes were being built were out like in Sylmar and Palmdale, and they were like new housing neighborhoods. And quite honestly, I thought the houses were all pretty ugly, and we knew that although we could have benefited, by gotten a slight break in the price by going that route, and again, one of our neighbors did, we knew it just wasn't what we wanted and wasn't consistent with the neighborhood. So we didn't rebuild the exact house we had. We built a new house with new plans, a modest craftsman-style house that really fit the neighborhood nicely. And in terms of adding the 20%, in essence, we added a bathroom, and that was it. And so we did utilize that. We added a bathroom, and we built a house that I think is very much consistent with the other homes in the neighborhood.
What's your address?
5444
Yeah, I'm looking at it here.
Parkmore Road.
So just so I can understand, is it your understanding that there really are only 2 lots left that are the subject of this ordinance that are potentially problematic?
I believe so, because there are 4 lots remaining, and 2 of them are across the street from us, and one of them has just begun construction. And it's my understanding that the other one has either been approved or close to being approved. And that just leaves 2 vacant lots, one directly next door to us and one a couple doors up. And again, when I say that the people that now are not the original owners, the lot 2 doors up, that lot was already sold, and now it's been sold again. So whoever comes in there to enjoy the benefits of the Woolsey overlay, they're 3 generations away from the family that lost their house in the fire.
John?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, go away,
And
if I could ask.
Oh, okay.
you
There's
come back?
another question for you, but I'd like to ask a question of staff before you ask that question. I recall seeing that the ordinance specifically includes subsequent owners, not just the existing owners, correct?
Yes. The ordinance was not limited to just the owners who lost their homes in the fire. It was structured to allow those owners or subsequent owners to build under its rules.
Okay, thank you.
I think we all can understand the trauma that you guys have been through and the work it takes to get recover like that. One of the things that strikes me from the testimony we've heard here, or I guess the witness of what's going on in Upper Malibu Canyon, and that is landscaping was also destroyed in many instances. That's why I kind of asked about the mapping issue, because when you denude a place, whether it's the riparian area or the homes that are up against it, it was an asset and now it's a liability until the stuff grows back. Are you seeing that the various folks, including yourselves, are adding to their landscaping and changing it so that as it matures, it will actually help mitigate some of the concerns that we're hearing from the folks who are worried about the feel and the area, and even the architectural impacts that we're talking about?
I would say yes and no. When we went through our rebuild, we were advised by the city and actually given actual examples as to what we could plant for landscaping and what we could do. And we worked with the landscaper, we worked within the guidelines. However, the house across the street from me, which is completed, has done no landscaping whatsoever, which surprises me because it was my understanding that when we rebuilt our house, that before we can get our certificate of occupancy that we were actually required to complete the landscaping. So that's why I say yes and no. We've done the landscaping, but of course, a lot of large trees were lost, pine trees and things that we can't plant anymore because of their fire hazards. So I'm sure whatever comes back is going to come back differently, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Or it kind of remains to be seen how it will look, just because it's all, new growth and new plant life. But what's different is, for example, just the absence of all the pine trees. For example, now on Parkmore Road, you can hear the freeway as louder than you ever could before, because you had that nice natural sound barrier before. And the views are different, and that's why, for example, this house 2 doors up from me, with this very, 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 very large house, because there's less landscaping and less trees all around the hillsides and such, everything is more visible, just because there's less growth and there's
Sure.
less landscaping.
That's the reason I asked the question. One of the things I was going to recommend, not just to the folks who were here at the hearing, but anybody who's going to pay attention to this, the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District has a very aggressive program to help folks deal with everything from fire-safe landscaping to, California native landscaping to, fire-resistant landscaping, all this stuff. And all of us are going to have to deal, anybody who owns a home, even if you're in an apartment, you're going to have to deal with what's going to happen with the fire regulations that are going to follow all of these things. I mean, we're dealing with the reconstruction and with the character of the community as best we can, and I guarantee you the character of the community throughout Calabasas and the 101 corridor is going to be significantly changed. And we have ordinances in place, as you know, and you probably all had to conform to, both, resource efficient and fire resistant and home self-defense issues. And even insurance these days is being impacted by all these changes. So it might be worthwhile, if you have an HOA presence, to talk about how, as a community, you're going to strategize to agree on what the environment should look like, what the landscaping needs to be, and what is going to get you the best deals when you're looking for insurance or for remodeling and replanting, not just your homes, but also the riparian areas. So I'm not preaching so much as just saying that there are resources that are still available that can help you deal with everything from the aesthetics to the architectural to the fire safe and so forth. And staff is more than happy to help you with that kind of connection. And you can all go down to the water district, and they've got programs all over the place to figure out what you can do to help yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Do we,
Could I speak to Commissioner Washburn's question regarding the pervious surface aspect?
do you want further discussion, answer to your?
I don't need it. I'm just saying that,
I-
staff is ready to serve.
I think we're going to move on, and we're getting a little far afield
Right.
from the ordinance and the overlay zone. So we're going to continue the discussion that we have been tasked to deal with, but thank you. All right. Commissioner Matt, do you have any comments?
Yeah. So I read your letter in full, Bettina. I really hear what you're saying. I do want to remind everybody that, part of the ordinance wasn't just to make those who lost a home whole by rebuilding, but to also make their land marketable so that they can sell, hopefully move on in case they didn't want to go through the rebuilding process, which again, kudos, that's truly amazing, 9 months. But it does sound like, the ordinance, the urgency ordinance, has fulfilled its purpose. It sounds like there's only there's one piece of land we're talking about now. It sounds like the other one's permitted, if I'm not mistaken, or at least on its way, please.
It's on its way. An application with the planning department has been filed. It's been deemed incomplete, but we expect that it could be deemed complete very soon.
So, and is that the piece of land, sorry to not recall, is that the piece of land that they're talking about, or is the one that they're adjacent to the one that's completely?
I don't want to get too far down that direction, just in case something ends up in the planning commission's
Yeah,
realm.
Yeah.
keep it
Okay.
a little higher level than.
Okay, well,
than
I'll
that.
I'll just say that, you know, these nice people came and voiced their concern, and I hear it, and, you know, I would be inclined to sort of stop go on that piece, or at least what's left.
Commissioner Leah, do you have anything?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anything further?
I pretty much got my remarks in, but I would just encourage everybody, not just the folks who have testified tonight, but everybody in the neighborhood, because you are a community, to get in touch with the staff. Don't stew. Come over and talk and see what can be done to make things better, because that's our intention, I think, overall, from a legal standpoint, which is what the ordinance is. And if there are problems in your neighborhood, the other part of the process is code enforcement. You know, because we have lots of code in Calabasas and the state of California and the county of LA. And, you know, there's always a way to improve the way you live. And if you haven't heard me say this before, I'll say it again. Calabasas was studied recently and is #1 in the United States as the most, I guess, admired quality of life. Beverly Hills is 19, Atherton is 34. So, I mean, it's like, we work hard to try to maintain not just a quality of life and a security and a presence, but also the things that make us proud of the community. So take advantage of the resources. And it isn't over just because we say, hey, this zoning or overlay is done. This is a way to make sure that we don't miss out on the things that we're entitled to, and at the same time, also how we preserve the quality of life in our town.
Thank you. Commissioner Mueller, anything further?
Yes, I'm still struggling with what it, oh, sorry. I'm struggling with what it is we are being asked to do tonight.
Well-
I don't know whether we have, if anyone was interested in changing the overlay ordinance,
Well,
is that before us?
Well, what is before us, as I read it, we are to provide to the city council suggested future actions, if any, for furtherance of the ordinance and its implementation, sunsetting of the ordinance, or other possible actions for consideration. So the city council wants a recommendation from us, it sounds like,
Well, I read
your
to
sort of-
do something or to do nothing.
Well, I read those words, but I don't know whether that means we could modify some ordinance that exists, or we simply could extend the sunset date, or extend the sunset date and have a new ordinance that is modified for the extended period.
Well,
Those
we're
are
not
three different
doing,
things.
we're not doing any of it. We're
Recommending.
making
I
a
understand.
recommendation to council.
Yeah, Chair and Commissioners, so the range of options is take no action, recommend the council to take no action, which means the current ordinance would last until its current expiration date of December 31st, 25. And that would be what the default. If there's no other action taken, that's what happens. Other options would be to extend it, recommended it be extended further, recommend it be shortened and brought back in. That would not apply to anything that's already been approved, but could apply to the site for which there's no application, maybe to the site for the application is pending, although that would be something to think through very carefully. So really, you're looking at the one site there. Nothing has been applied yet. No protections exist. Other than this ordinance, if you cut it down, that'd be an option to recommend to council, or to recommend to the council, keep the date, but adjust some of the rules. For example, cut back down the 20% extra square footage could be cut to something less that triggers a zoning clearance. Tweaks around the edges could be recommended if the commission wants to, or recommend that no change except shave it down by some amount,
Well,
save the time down.
Okay. I think Commissioner Matt hit it right, which is, and now it's been confirmed, that unfortunately a lot of the water is flowing under the bridge. And we're talking about one, maybe 1.5 or 2 lots that could be impacted by anything anyone does. If I had the magic wand, I would say my recommendation is leave the date as it is. But if we could recommend to the council words that would require that any development on any of the impacted properties has some sort of retention of character of the neighborhood, I would support that. We do that all the time. We have lots of ordinances that say that if you're going to build something, it's got to fit within the neighborhood,
It can't
both in
be
terms
pink.
of size and color and roof and all that. So it wouldn't be extraordinary for us to recommend that, at least as to this one property, which is nothing but weeds and third-generation heirs, do something that is reasonably consistent with the character of the neighborhood. And I'm kind of getting tired of hearing, well, this neighborhood is eclectic, which basically means you can do whatever you want. I'm not from these folks, these good folks. I don't hear this as an eclectic neighborhood. I hear it's reasonably kind of consistent from '64. And the gentleman who just rebuilt his house, consistent with this ordinance, did something that, quote, fit in and was appreciated by the neighborhood. So that would be those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Commissioner Harrison?
Yeah, thank you. One of my brothers used to live in one of these 1,804 square foot homes on Parkmore. He now lives in Seattle. But I think to accomplish with what Commissioner Mueller is saying, we simply need to terminate this ordinance, this urgency ordinance, because by terminating it, everything goes back to the default, and when somebody wants to propose a size that exceeds a certain threshold, then it must go to the architectural review panel, it must go to the planning commission, and that's how you accomplish all that, so you don't end up with that big Spanish house with the 1,198 square foot ADU. By the way, that's because 1,200 feet is the maximum. So that's how you accomplish it. And there's really only one lot that seems to be the issue, and it's not clear to me who owns it because, as I said, the owners are either extremely elderly or it's in some kind
Right,
of...
the ownership of that lot's unclear.
Yeah, but why should somebody else take advantage of this bonus when it's an empty lot right now and they don't live there? So that doesn't make any sense to me. I would just terminate this immediately. That's what I would recommend, because we aren't doing anything. We're just recommending. And then it just goes through the normal process. I'm glad that the proposal for the 5460 is below the maximum and doesn't get to bypass. See, the problem is just going to staff bypasses the architectural review panel, so the community doesn't get input there, and the community doesn't get input in the planning commission, and that's not what we're supposed to be about. I don't think the council really, I don't know if they realize that they passed an ordinance that encouraged McMansions to be built. I don't think that was their intention, but that's what's happened. And so I think it needs to be terminated. There's no justification for it the way I see it now, and it would accomplish with what Commissioner Mueller is saying. I think you did a great job. I was just looking at the picture of Mr. Zone of the street, and you did a great job of, even though it's more contemporary, it certainly fits in better than the house across the street, which seems to have a wrecked retaining wall falling and just a lot of rubble on their non-landscaped front yard. And I don't know why our staff isn't doing something about that. And also, I don't know why our staff, and I don't mean our planning staff, but code enforcement should be there at that house, and the code enforcement should be next door. Because on the same photo I was just looking at here, the lot next door to you has County of Los Angeles conservation truck on it, clearing garbage away. And that, I don't understand why that's happening. The family who owns it should be maintaining the property. It's clearly a nuisance, and code enforcement should have been notified by our staff, by our planning staff, and if not by them, by you, because there's a place on on our website where you can just click on and report something to code enforcement. And they need to,
Let me just jump into the code enforcement.
Yeah.
So as you noted, anybody can submit a code enforcement
Right.
complaint and it gets resolved. We don't know the date of that photo, et cetera. We're not gonna.
it says 1 year ago.
We're not gonna
It's-
litigate a
it's-
code enforcement case
Right,
here.
it's 1 year ago,
If there is
so-
concerns, please report them to staff and they'll be looked
Exactly,
into.
so you can go online and do it, or you can call, or our staff, our planning staff should be reporting this to the code enforcement staff to have that taken care of, because it's, I mean, I don't know how you live next to that, it's unsightly and not safe.
Okay,
So that's it. I would recommend termination.
thank you. All right, I have just a few comments. I appreciate hearing from the people who live in this neighborhood. You have been very clear about your concerns, and I am sympathetic to an extent. I am sympathetic towards those concerns. My concern is that this ordinance, or these ordinances, because there ended up being two, were implemented as urgency measures, no question. But by the second ordinance, were extended till December of 2025. And the ordinance is definitely applicable not only to the original owners who lost their homes, but to any subsequent owners. And my concern is that there's, for all intents and purposes, one house left, one property left. One is mid-process. I would have a lot of concerns with changing the rules on someone who is mid-process. But I also have a concern about changing the rules on one property that was intended to be included in a small number of properties to which the ordinance applies. I'd be concerned that if we sunset this, if we recommend to council that they sunset this or terminate it, that we are denying the owner of, or owners of that property a use enjoyed by the surrounding properties. And singling them out, and that can be, legally, that can be an issue, and that concerns me. There is just one house left, one property left. I do like where you were going, Commissioner Mueller, with perhaps recommending to council language along the lines of what you proposed, but I would suggest that if we were to do that, the language would have to be at a fairly high level, because otherwise we get back into, I don't want to say discrimination against the owner of that house, but of that property, but issues with perhaps denying them the use that others have been, others who were intended recipients of the benefits of the ordinance have enjoyed. So again, I would not be opposed to recommending some kind of language along the lines of what you proposed, but again, I would suggest it would have to be fairly general, high level, and I see our city attorney writing over there, perhaps wordsmithing. So what I'm going to do, at this point, everybody has been heard from. I am going to ask for a motion, and perhaps Commissioner Mueller, you'd like to make that motion?
Well, I'd be happy to make the motion. I'm not voting tonight, but I can make the motion.
You can make the motion.
So my motion would be to recommend to the city council leaving the sunset date of December 31, 2025 for the ordinance in place, but with a further recommendation that the city council, working with the city attorney's office, craft some language to amend the ordinance that would provide for
Objective
an
neighborhood compatibility, neighborhood conformity finding.
yes, and I think, yes, exactly, and I think you can find language that is currently in many of our ordinances which have that goal in mind.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Actually, do we have any further discussion now that we have a motion on the floor? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed because I just think, as I said already, I think it should just be terminated.
Okay. So that motion is passed, 4 to 1.
I would just ask
Yes.
our attorney to determine or advise on the fact that the people who are here this evening or that may wish to testify before the city council can go and talk at the meeting at which this will be considered.
Well,
Yes,
it'll be noticed.
Yeah, absolutely.
hearing
So
will be
we'll
noticed.
move forward to the council with this recommendation and work on some draft language for the council to consider. And that'll be the public hearing at the city council. Date very much to be determined, but it'll be out on the city's website. So folks should come out and speak to the council about it. And we'll go from there.
All right.
And I'll add, if you want to leave your contact info with staff, we can make sure you get an email of that date. Volunteering staff, of course, but that seems
All right.
reasonable.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out. Thank you. All right, we are on to the director's report.
Thank you. I'll try and make this brief. Coming up, so we're looking at April 4th, discussing the housing programs. A couple weeks ago, we talked about housing laws and some of the changes that have been made. As this commission knows, we have an adopted housing element to be compliant with Sixth Cycle RENA, and within that housing element, the city is committed to various programs, including objective development standards, adaptive reuse, and pre-approved ADU plans. And so our intent is to bring a discussion forward to the Planning Commission, seeking the Planning Commission's recommendation on different types of those programs for the council to consider having staff moving forward with. After that, looking at the second meeting in April, right now we have a couple single-family homes that are tentatively on the agenda. We have to wait for those applications to be fully deemed complete, and if they are, then those will move forward. I also do want to mention for the commission that this past weekend, the city reopened the community center, and for those who haven't been out there yet, it's fantastic. Our community services department did a wonderful job, as did other departments that were involved in that process. And Public Works also did Arbor Day that same day over the weekend. And then coming up, April 13th is Earth Day, and our Mayor's Youth Council is actually sponsoring a creek cleanup there as well. This at the Las Virgenes Creek. I believe they're meeting around the tech center.
Terrific. Thank you. Do we have reports from any of the commissioners? No? No?
I would just ask that in future months or years perhaps, that we look beyond Las Virgenes Creek and look at the watershed areas of the Arroyo Calabasas, from all the water that runs off of this place and my house and Calabasas High School. There are places to actually hold an Earth Day that deals with the issues that are important to that area as it is to other parts of the city.
We'll pass that to staff. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Leah?
No, nothing.
Commissioner Matt? All right.
Move to adjourn.
I took you at your
He
word.
will forever be Commissioner Matt.
You may be, until I learn how to pronounce
It's just
your name.
easier. It's just easier. Let's go with it.
Well, thank you for your graciousness in that. We have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Well, no. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I moved.
You moved,
Yeah.
you seconded? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.